Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I am Kat Hobson, your host. I am so fortunate tonight. I've got a wonderful guest. He is also going to be speaking at the Ozark UFO Conference the weekend of April 8th through the 10th. And if you don't have tickets, there's some still available, I'm sure. I will be there. Their lineup is fantastic. I just saw that my friend Mark D'Antonio has been added for the first day, Friday morning. So if you haven't seen his presentations, you will enjoy them. Not only that, but Rey Hernandez, my guest tonight, is the director of the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. He coined the term Contact Modalities. And I think that a lot of y'all are going to be surprised because we have appeared in several instances to be on the same track with our research and understanding. He's got a lot more years than I do in this focused research, but he really is someone who is motivational to me. And I've got to tell you, being new to parts of this study, to have you, Ray, state that something that I have found, you have also found with all of your academics backing this up, really was a boost. I have been kind of mocked for this, but I am so glad that you are here. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Kat, for that wonderful introduction, and hopefully we'll get into some of the details of my work. And it's not just my work; it's a very large group of both researchers and PhD academics that have been working in collaboration since 2013 to try to get a better understanding of the riddles of our greater reality.
Well, there are several. How did you come to be studying this? What brought you to this work?
Well, previous to March 4th, 2012, I was a total atheist, materialist, rationalist. I had gone to various prestigious universities. I went to Rutgers College for a BA. I went to Cornell University for a master's. I went to University of California at Berkeley for a PhD. And then I taught for many years. And then I later became a tax attorney. And that's what I do now. And so on that day, I had an experience jointly shared with my wife where we both saw an energy being that appeared in our living room. And that energy being came and totally healed our Jack Russell Terrier, who we were going to be euthanizing later that afternoon. And she became paralyzed the day before on a Saturday night at 8:00. And so my wife had just come from a 3-day retreat at her Catholic church. And she began to pray all night. And me being the good atheist is just told her, do all the praying that you want. You know, tomorrow is her last day on earth. And then in the morning, we woke up, we checked the dog. She was still totally paralyzed. And so I went back to bed and my wife carried her dog down the stairs. And then in the middle of the living room, she saw this object floating 4 feet off the ground. And then she thought it was her angel that she had been praying all night for. And she began to call me and she was screaming, Ray, 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 Ray. And I totally ignored her because I thought she had seen a little mouse or a cockroach or something like that. So after like a couple of minutes of her yelling for me to go down, she went upstairs and she physically pushed me out of bed, telling me that I need to see this. So I reluctantly went down the stairs with her and she was in front of me, maybe 2 or 3 steps. And then when she got to the living room floor, she and the dog disappeared right in front of me. And then all of a sudden, in front of me, in the corner of our living room, was this object, and I'll describe it to you. It was roughly 2.5 feet wide by about a foot in height, sort of rectangular shape, but it didn't have any solid aspects to it because it was pure energy. It had multiple colors swirling inside, like a desert mirage. You know how that swirls like that?
I do. Mm-hmm.
And then it was semi-transparent. And then that intelligence took over my consciousness. I didn't care that my wife disappeared, that my dog disappeared. I looked at it and then I said, bullshit. This is what you got me up for this crap. I'm going back to sleep. Okay. Now, that's not something normal that you would say or you would think. Okay.
In that circumstance, I agree.
That's what happened because it was able to get into my thoughts and control my thoughts. So then I walked up the stairs. I put my hands on my chest and I was knocked out. Approximately an hour later, when I woke up, I then was fully conscious. I had all my mental faculties at that time. And I was like, holy, you know what? And I ran down the stairs. And then all of a sudden, my wife popped back into reality. I saw her look down. The dog was running around the entire living room like she was a puppy. And my wife began screaming, you know, hallelujah, hallelujah, the angels cured her, the angels cured her. And she would pick up the dog and hug her and kiss her and put the dog down. The dog be running around and she'd be celebrating in the living room. And to me, it was like an atom bomb exploded in my brain. And I was like motionless without any words because I was just trying to rationalize what the hell was going on. And after a minute, a minute is a long time if you're counting it down. I then, told my wife, I said, where were you? She said, what do you mean, where was I? I didn't go anywhere. I said, no, look at the time. And I pointed to the clock and it was like 7 o'clock and we had woken up like 6. I says, where were you all this time? She says, I was here the whole time. That's not the time, or that clock is wrong, or it actually is 7 o'clock. And, that's the time we woke up. I said, no, we woke up at 6. Remember, we both looked at the clock. I said, where were you? She says, I didn't go anywhere. What are you talking about? And I said, well, what happened? She says, you were there. Didn't you see it? Didn't you see my angel? I said, I didn't see an angel. And then I described what she saw, what I saw. And then she described what she saw. And she saw a physical object, like an upside down U. And it was large. She described it like a little craft, like a little saucer. In Spanish, she said, se parecía una nave, which translates to it appeared like a craft. And she could have sworn that there were little people inside it. Okay. And then, and then I said, I didn't see that. Then I described to her what I saw. And then we both drew what each other saw. And they were two different things. Okay. And then, there was nothing else to talk about because she didn't know what happened. We saw two different things. And I would ask her questions. She said, I didn't know. And she said, what happened to you? I said, well, I saw that thing. And I totally dismissed it. I didn't care that you disappeared, So it was total chaos. And then what happened was...
with the puppy running around the whole time, right?
The puppy, she wasn't like she was 16 years old, by the way. And
oh my gosh.
Before her paralysis, she was like an old 95-year-old lady. Mm-hmm. She had severe arthritis. She was taking Viagra for her heart, little drops that we would give her every day. She was taking diuretics to flush out the excess liquids in her body, just like an elderly person. And she couldn't run, she couldn't jump. And now she was like a puppy running around, super active. We brought her to our pediatrician later on because she was taking all this medication. And we're saying, should she still take it or not? Because she appeared perfectly healthy. And he said, what happened to her? I said, well, we changed her diet. He says, impossible. She had this disease, she had that. Now she doesn't have anything. What happened? Well, it was the diet. It must have done a miracle, And so, he left it at that. But our dog, Nena, which means little girl in Spanish, survived 11 and a half months, okay? And towards the very end, like the last 2 weeks, like Cinderella, it's like in those last 2 weeks, she then reverted back to how she was before. And we eventually had to euthanize her. And it was very, very quick, maybe 10 days, she quickly went down. So she had an extra year. They gave her an extra year. But imagine if she was never, if she never went back to her unhealthy stage. You would have the dog that's like 20 years old, 25 years old, running around like a puppy, They couldn't allow that,
I understand.
And so then about a month and a half, it was 2.5 months after that, our dog woke my wife up at 3:30 in the morning. So my wife said, okay, maybe she wants to go to the bathroom, or she went outside, opened it. Then she heard this super large noise, loud noise. And then it lasted a minute, then it stopped. And then she looked up and there was the Goodyear blimp right above her. Okay. And she goes to me that morning, she goes, oh, my angels came and visited me last night. They came in a beautiful angelic craft. It had stained glass windows all around it, just like our beautiful church, And so I asked her to draw it. She drew it. And I said, what you saw was a UFO. She says, I didn't see a UFO. you wouldn't understand because you're an atheist, you know? And so then after that, my wife would be outside praying and these UFOs would appear. In Mexico, it was accelerated. Twice it was seen by her family members. And so that I knew now it was UFO related. So previous to that, I was on the internet studying the paranormal, you know, and now, you know, I'd purchased, you know, tons of books on UFOs and watch every show on the internet. But I soon realized that what I was watching did not match what had happened to us in our living room, because what was on the internet was that these are all horrible, evil beings.
Right.
They're
Everything
is all negative, you know? And I'm saying, what the hell? That's not what happened to us, you know? And I didn't see any little grays and shit and stuff like that. I saw something totally different, right? So then what happened next? This is late August. My wife had been in Mexico a whole month, and she had tons of experiences where she saw these 3 tall beings. She described them as being 7 or 8 feet tall. And then they floated. They were in white monk robes, and they floated right in front of her. And then they turned, you know, the corner of the house. And she described that to me. And then I was waiting for a friend of mine. He had all these tickets, traffic tickets. And he was arrested by the police because he never paid the tickets. So he said, Ray, what should I do? Well, that'll do it. I said, what should I do? And I said, look, give me all of those tickets. I will do a motion to consolidate all those tickets. So you go to court one time and you work it out with the judge, a payment plan, you know? So that, but I said, but I need the tickets. So he calls me one evening. This is late. This is like 9:30 at night. He goes, Ray, I got the tickets. And this is August in Miami. It's very, very hot. So then I'm waiting outside for him. He doesn't show up. Then all of a sudden, I remember this video on YouTube of this man. His name was Prophet Yahweh. And he was a heavyset African-American man. And he would speak in Hebrew, calling down the UFO. And this particular one that I saw, they had an NBC camera crew there, okay? So they were videotaping all this. And they were making fun of this poor man, you know, joking and laughing, and the studio crew at the main studio. And then all of a sudden, this ball appeared in the sky. And it would be moving to the left, moving to the right. And then all of a sudden they said, back to the studio. and so I said to myself, look, my wife is calling down these UFOs. This guy, Prophet Yahweh, is calling down these UFOs. Let's give it a try, right? But I started off just killing time. I wasn't very sincere. But once I got into it, I became very emotional because I was thinking of our dog, who was like our child. We had our dog before our first daughter, you know? And so it became very emotional, very sincere. And then after 15 minutes, I said to myself, I said, what a fool. You know, I'm going down the rabbit's hole. I'm going crazy. I need to stop this right away, you know? And I use more colorful language, you know?
I'm sure.
And this was, I didn't say it out loud. It was all thoughts, right? Then all of a sudden, right on top of my next door neighbor's house, literally 30 feet away from me, was this huge object that was the size of a small football stadium. It was the equivalent to about 100, like a football stadium in height, and it went back like 6 football fields. And it was comprised of hundreds of oblong streaks of light that were streaking in 3 different sections. There was a middle section, there was a section much more closer to us, almost right on top of us, and there was a section that I could have sworn was right over the highway. It was a 6-lane highway. And inside was all this swirling white plasma, okay? And this was a cloudy day, totally cloudy day, and it was transparent, so you could see the clouds behind it. And then I heard a voice. The voice said, Daddy, you and Mommy have seen UFOs. Next time you guys see a UFO, you call me, Daddy, all right? Don't forget. Now, I had never told that to my daughter because, first of all, I had never seen a UFO before. This is the first time it's happening. But in my mind was like, my daughter wants to see it. So I ran over to the window. I'm yelling at the window, and she pops up in the window, and I tell her, run outside. There's a UFO here. There's a UFO here. Run, run, run. So boom, she runs outside, and she's there with me. She said, what is that, Daddy? I said, sweetheart, it's a UFO, but it's in hiding. It doesn't want to get caught by radar. I said, you know what radar is? And she says, yeah, I know what radar is. And I said, well, if it's real low to the ground, it's right on top of the neighbor's house. And that's why it doesn't want to get caught. And it wasn't fully materialized.
You know what?
Thank you. Yep.
Ray, I have to interrupt you. We have to take a break.
Okay.
This is so awesome. We'll be right back. Y'all come back too.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, Cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? Well, you see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watch a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the legwork. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology that goes to anything you can think of a bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I am Kat Hobson, your host, as my friend Rick McCollum is wont to say, the voice of fate, as it were. I'm so glad that you are here tonight, and I just wanted to let you know that Ray's going to be speaking at the Ozark Mountain UFO Conference. The basics, the mechanics of what he does and how he got there, and the education that he brings, as well as the rest of the 25 plus PhD level researchers are, I mean, you can't go wrong with this information. And Ray, I interrupted you as you were describing the experiences you had that brought you into this study. You started as a UFO experiencer, and please continue.
Well, thank
you would like with that?
Well, during this experience, I'm not going to go in a lot of detail, but there was telepathic communication back and forth. That's when I first realized that the phenomenon was actually a holographic projection. Because when my friend came, he came with his wife and his daughter, and then they started questioning it. They started coming up with explanations. So in my head, I thought, I sent a message to this intelligence. I said, you better come up with some better junk than this, because they don't believe you.
They're not buying this.
I used some more colorful letter words, and so it was a thought, like I was talking to them, like it was natural. And it's weird because I've never talked to, any being or any intelligence or anything of that, but it just came out supernatural. I said, you better come up with some better, junk than this, because my friends don't believe you, All of a sudden, while we were watching, instantaneously disappeared, and they were replaced by about 100 stars, large stars that were not in the sky. They were inside where that object was. Okay.
Inside the object?
Inside, but that object was no longer there because it totally disappeared. So you had literally 100 very large stars, and they were blinking on and off, super fast, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. Like in the back of a bike, you've seen these people ride their bikes at night, and you have that light that flickers on and off. It was just like that. And then these stars would take turns powering up, like the size of the moon, and then powering down. And it would be one at a time, and they would do it in different sections, So then my friends stopped, because they knew now that this was not, natural. This is not human. This is something otherworldly. And then the way they got me to leave was they put a thought projection in my mind. Oh, and that's why I realized that this was a holographic projection. Why? Because it projected to me that first object of the oblong streaks of light. Okay. Then after I gave it a thought, like, look, you better come up with some better stuff than this. All of a sudden that was erased, and a new projection was put in my eyesight to see. Okay. And there have been many experiences like that. And I'll go into those details later on, but that's one initial hypothesis from the very beginning. And then the way they got me to leave is like, all of a sudden, I thought I was being attacked by hundreds of mosquitoes. So I grabbed my daughter, we go inside, and I'm telling my wife everything that happened. I said, we had to go inside because these mosquitoes are killing me. And so my daughter looks at me and she goes, Daddy, there were no mosquitoes outside. And when she said that, it was like the hypnotist snapped his finger, and I woke up from a trance, and now I was fully conscious, fully awake. So I ran downstairs, I grabbed my professional camera, my video camera. I ran outside like in 30 seconds. Nothing was there. And that's when I realized, my goodness, they could project images and thoughts and experiences to you like I believed it. But my daughter didn't see it, but yet I experienced it, like the mosquitoes, okay? And then after that, the very next day, I saw a video on YouTube on near-death experiences. That blew me away, okay? Then I ordered like 20 books, used books on NDEs. And I also ordered books on the physics of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I began reading, tons of books like The Tao of Physics, all of articles on the early quantum physicists, articles even by Edgar Mitchell that I wound up meeting a few months later. And it was started 4 hours a day. By the end of December, it was then 12 to 18 hours a day. Okay. And at the very end, that last month, I didn't shower, I didn't shave, I slept very little. I didn't do any of my personal work. All of my time was reading these books on near-death experiences and on the science of consciousness. And then 3 days in a row, December 21st, 2012, which is a Friday, December 22nd, Saturday, December 23rd, 2012, Sunday. The very first 3 people I ever mentioned NDEs to, all of them had it. The first one was my daughter's pediatrician. My daughter was next to me. where we're talking and all of a sudden a robotic voice comes out of me. Excuse me, doctor. Have you ever heard the term near-death experiences? I've just finished reading approximately 300 books on this topic. Many of them are written by medical doctors such as yourself, and it's a phenomenon that you need to know about. And in my head, I was saying, what the, is going on? I've got a split personality. My wife was like saying she was gonna, leave me, that I needed to go to a psychiatrist because I'm acting crazy. I'm not showering. I'm not brushing my teeth. I'm not, bathing. I didn't care about her and the daughter. And it was like I was a crazy madman. And it was like, oh, well, let me finish this last book. And so I said, yes, I am crazy. Look, I got somebody living inside me. And then all of a sudden, the doctor's eyeballs bulge out. And I said, oh, my goodness, now this woman thinks I'm a crazy madman. So I go to her, excuse me, doctor. I apologize. I don't know why I said that. And then she looks at me and she says, there's no need to apologize. How did you know I had one? And so in front of my daughter, she begins to tell me the details of her NDE. And she's still a practicing pediatrician. She's a very young woman. Her name is Dr. Claudia Herrera. Okay, she's originally from Colombia. Yes. And so the next day, we were at a church social function, and there were like maybe 50 parejas, pairs, 50 pairs. And it was all people from the Spanish ministry. Most of them were married. And it was a dinner, at the hall of the local Catholic church. So my wife sat next to this Mexican lady, which she knew. They were very good friends. And I never met her husband. So I met the man. The man also came from Cuba at a very young age. And so we spoke for like about a minute. What year did you come? This and that. Where were your parents from? Where were you born? That's what. Then all of a sudden, excuse me, Max. I've just finished reading approximately 300 books on this, on near-death experiences. Okay, and it's a phenomenon that you need to know about. Blah blah. Because he had told me that he is an X-ray technician at the local hospital, and so he looks at me. And I said, holy shit, now here's another guy that thinks I'm crazy, right? And I said, sorry, Max, I don't know why I said that. And in my head was like, I really am certifiably nuts. I got another voice in front of me, inside of me, another person inside of me. And so I apologized to Max, and Max goes, Ray, I've never told this to anyone else. But about a year ago, my mother died in my arms in my house. Nobody was there except me and her. After she was resuscitated in the hospital, she began then to tell me all the details of her NDE. She was floating right above me, that I was crying on top of her. I told her this, I told her that, I told that. All of a sudden, busted through the door was this tall, heavy-set, black man, followed by a short blonde woman with a blonde ponytail. But Mom, how did you know that? Those are the paramedics. She says, I already told you, I was floating above you. I saw everything. And she, unlike the medical doctor, went to the higher realms, and saw her deceased husband. So then that was on Saturday, and he told me other details. And then the next day, every Sunday, I went to see my parents. My father was quite ill. He was bedridden. And so I told my mom, I said, let me get Pop dressed, We can go outside. I got something very important to tell both of you. And so my father was like the world's biggest atheist besides myself. At least that's what I thought. And so I said, he's very, very ill. This man could die any day. And let me try to give him some spirituality before he dies. And so I told him what happened on Friday and what happened on Saturday. And he goes, that happened to me. I said, what? And he goes, he said, when he had the open heart surgery for a quadruple heart bypass, he floated out of his body. He saw all the doctors and all the nurses, and he was just floating around for a little while. And he said, all of a sudden, a vacuum cleaner sucked him up. And he went through this tunnel, and super fast through the tunnel. He went through the light, and after the light dissipated, they're waiting for him. They were all very young. It was his father, mother, and his brother, all deceased. Okay. They then communicated, and he said, we didn't use our mouths. We used mind to mind. And that is known as telepathic communication. Mm-hmm. And just like with UFO contact intelligences, all communication is telepathic. And so he then tells me he was up there 20 or 30 years. I said, what do you mean you were up there 20 or 30 years? He says, because all of a sudden this big gigantic ball of energy appears, and I knew it was God, and he began to show me all the good things I had done in my life and all the bad things. And that lasted 20 to 30 years. I said, well, can you give me examples? And he would give me examples that he would experience that particular event. For example, he's fighting a little 13-year-old kid. He's pounding the hell out of him on the floor. He experienced that not only from his body pounding the kid, but also the kid receiving the punches. Mm-hmm. And then after each and every one of these experiences, God would ask him, well, what did you learn from that? He told me God is not judgmental. He says, we're the only ones that judge ourselves. Okay. And he also said, hell doesn't exist. I said, what do you mean hell doesn't exist? Because God is pure love, you know? So hell cannot exist because everything is all love, you know? And I'm like freaking out because I thought he was like the world's biggest atheist, you know? And so...
Well, he did surprise you a lot.
Oh, yes, because he never spoke about it. So after me asking questions, all of a sudden he stopped answering them. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And I just couldn't budge him. So I then turned to my mother, who was right next to me. I said, did you ever hear this before? I never heard about it. She said, we only spoke about it once. That was when he was coming out of the surgery. And he was like crazy wanting to tell me. And I was like, go back to sleep, go back to sleep. No, I got to tell you. Go back to sleep. God damn it, I need to tell you. And he finally told her. And she said, after that, he went back to sleep and they never spoke about it again. Okay.
That's so interesting that they didn't.
Yeah, no, because she thought it was the anesthesia. And my father, all the time, he'd be watching TV, but he wouldn't be watching the TV. He'd just be staring out in the air, you know? And now I know he was just living that experience over and over again, you know, because he was 20 years away, you know. And so on my way home, I put down my windows and there were some stars in the sky. And for the first time in my life, I spoke to God, okay, and to these what I call modern angels, which are the intermediaries. And I thanked them. And I said, I want to thank you because in a 4-month period, you had managed to totally transform and total atheist materialist into someone that I don't have a belief. No, I don't have a belief. I have a knowingness. I know that I am an eternal spiritual being. And I have that knowingness more than any Catholic priest in Miami. And for that, I want to thank you. So that's how they gave me spirituality.
Well, Ray, I have to tell you that's astounding. Yeah,
no, that's just the beginning.
Yes.
That's just the beginning of so many other experiences. They eventually stopped after like 3.5 years, but it was nonstop. It was things like this, you know, nonstop. Like, for example, how the Edgar Mitchell Foundation was started. That was another orchestrated event. Here I was for about 9 months having these experiences nonstop. I would be going out of my body. I would see being like shadow beings in the house.
I mean, you were experiencing the full realm of what's considered paranormal or anomalous.
Yes. Well, that's what we discovered in our research site. I'll talk about it a little bit later. And so then I had, in October, I had sent a letter to like 10 very famous names. You know, Whitley Strieber, Mary Rodwell, I guess it was Grant Cameron, a few folks, right? And I only gotten like responses back from a few people. But on this one particular day, which was in May, okay? This is now 9 months after I had sent that letter for help because I thought I was going crazy, okay? All of a sudden, I'm driving my car in the middle of a traffic jam at 8:30 in the morning, and I'm not in the car anymore in the traffic jam. I'm like pure mind, pure consciousness. Everything is all dark. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And then all of a sudden, little by little, I see myself inside a huge, gigantic cart with wheels and spokes. And I'm in the very center of it looking out. And then inside each spoke was a video. And I would look at it and I would see the video of it and I knew what it was. And then I was getting these downloads of what that was. So for example, I would see one spoke and it would be near-death experiences. It'd be turning slightly around. The next one was out-of-body experiences. The next one was UFOs, UAPs. The next one was ghosts and spirits, etc. And the next one was hallucinogenic journeys. The next one was remote viewing, astral travel, mystical meditation where you pop out of your body, and it just went on, all these different experiences. And it wasn't just a video, it was the information. It wasn't a voice. It was just information that was being sent to me. And then all of a sudden, I got additional information, not like a voice, but it said, these are all the different ways that humans are communicating with us, okay? And it says humans are studying them as separate and distinct phenomenon, okay? But they're not. It's all one phenomenon, okay? And then it gave me an instruction of what I needed to do. And it said the glue that's holding it all together, humans are calling it consciousness.
Yes.
But what it is, it's the fabric of our reality, okay? And then it gave me an instruction. It says, you need to inform humanity of the relationship between us, the spirit world, and consciousness. The relationship between us, the spirit world, and consciousness. Now, when I was receiving that information, I had no idea what they meant, I was just there, bewildered, listening to this, And then it said, there's two criteria here. This is not about you getting rich, getting tons of money here. And secondly, you're going to need help. And the people that are going to be helping you have to be people with minimal ego. And once they said minimal ego, boom, I'm back in my car listening to this interview on public radio station of this man doing a documentary on his liposuction. He was doing art fat from a liposuction. And that interview did not skip a beat. It's like I was taken outside of time and space, and I was brought right back, where I was. But yet that experience lasted like 20 to 25 minutes, okay? And
that
then
was a lot of information to be getting.
Yes. And then when I got home, I got an email from Mary Rodwell, okay? And it says, Dear Ray, I'm sorry that I didn't respond to an email that you had sent me 6 months ago, but I got the email today. And so I then sent an email back. I said, well, this is what's happened in the last 6 months. And this is what happened today. And she immediately said, oh my God, Ray, we need to talk, okay? And she showed me how to use Skype. And then later on at night, we communicated via Skype, and I stayed till like 1:30 in the morning, my time talking to her. And she's in Australia, okay?
Oh, wow.
And for people who don't know Mary Rodwell, she's at the level of Kathleen Martin, Barbara Lamb, Leo Sprinkle, people that have been, and Rosemary Allen Guiley, people that have been working with thousands of UFO experiencers and so-called abductees, okay?
Okay, we have to take our second break. Let's not lose our place because this is important. So we'll be right back. Y'all come back with us, and thanks for listening.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate magazine, in publication since 1948. We've got a big anniversary coming up. But right now, I'm speaking with Rey Hernandez, who is sharing all the things that are building, Rey, to get, I'm assuming, to get free started. These are people that were researching before that even happened.
Yes.
So tell us more. I'd hate that I had to interrupt you. This is fantastic.
Yeah, Mary, as I was telling you off the air, she had been working for the last 30 years with UFO contactees and UFO abductees. She is a licensed therapist. And so she's not that well known here, but in Australia and in Europe, she's very, very well known. And she wrote a book titled Awakening, maybe over 10 years ago.
It's a brilliant book.
Yes. And then she wrote a second book. My goodness, I should know her second book. I have her second book. But sorry. But anyway, the point is, interview Mary Rodwell. Yes. And then once you interview, ask her, look, Rey told me this crazy story about him sending you an email and it being held up in cyberspace for 6 months. And it just happened to be the same day that he's having this experience where he's received all this information in another dimension, okay? And she will say, yes, this is exactly how it went down. So it's not like Rey Hernandez is bullshitting here, you know. It's you could actually interview someone and ask them that question.
Well, so, I don't doubt you. I know your reputation.
Yep. And so, anyway, why would I invent these things? I mean, this is, you know, there's no reason for it. You know,
there's not.
For it. And so then the very next day, and you could also interview this man, Dr. Rudy Shields. He's still alive. He's an emeritus professor of astrophysics at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. For 45 years, he worked at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in Cambridge University. And he was a very close friend of the late Dr. John Mack. And so he calls me at 9:30 in the morning. I didn't even know who this man was. He goes, hello, is this Rey Hernandez? I said, yes. Who's this? Dr. Rudy Shields. Who? No idea who this man was. What happened was that Mary had sent him a detailed interview of my experiences. And she had been working very closely with Rudy for many years. And Rudy would work with people that had experiences with consciousness and experiences with downloads of physics and science, which I also had, as a matter of fact. And so he called me up, he introduced himself. He said that Mary had sent him an email, and he says, okay to talk to me. I said, sure. So less than 25 hours of me having that experience, I'm on the phone with this professor at Harvard, you know. He's retired, you know, but for 45 years he was there. And then we spoke for 90 minutes. And there'd be too many details to go into the details of that. But then he said, look, Rey, what you had was a download of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's quantum hologram theory of consciousness.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. So we'll get into that when we get to the research too.
And then he began to explain it. And he had said he had just written a non-academic article, a lay article titled The Quantum Hologram and the Modern Miracles. Okay. And he said the only thing that I mentioned to him that he didn't write about was astrology, but I had everything else. He had everything else of the experience that I had. And so then he explained the reasons behind it. And that was that they're all interrelated, that they're not separate. The same thing that happened to me, you know, the day before. And so he was like fascinated, you know. And then he said, look, Rey, you need to talk to my mentor. And I'm like, who in the hell could be this guy's mentor? He's a professor at Harvard, you know?
He is a mentor.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. And so I said, who can be his mentor, you know? So I said, well, who's your mentor? He goes, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Okay. And he gave me the information for me to communicate with Edgar Mitchell. I waited like 4 hours because I was scared to contact him because I knew who he was, because I had been reading all these books about consciousness and ufology, and I knew that he was a pioneer in both areas. So I finally gave him a call, and he says, I've been waiting for your phone call. And so I thought he had ESP or something like that, but he said no, he already had spoken in detail with Rudy Shields about my conversation. And Rudy said that I would be calling him. So he was waiting for me to call. And so then he said, look, Ray, I live an hour and a half away from you. He lived in Lake Worth, Florida. He says, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, nothing. I'm just planning on working. He says, well, can you take the day off and come by my place? And I said, of course. And I said, what time? He said, 10 o'clock in the morning. And so at 10 a.m. sharp, I was right in front of his house. And I remember he had a German Shepherd outside that was playing with a bowling ball. He was with his nose pushing a bowling ball around. And I said, I'm not going to go outside and have this dog tear me up, And Edgar lived in an area with like very large lots. I don't know if it was 5 acres or something like that, And so what I did, I just honked my horn, and Edgar came out, and he led me inside the house. And I literally spent 6 hours at his home. And I won't give you all the details of what happened because it's a very lengthy conversation. But basically, it was there that Edgar said, look, Ray, you need to be able to implement the instructions that you were given, okay? And I'm saying, this man crazy? What the hell is he talking about? Instructions, I need to implement something.
With your download, right?
No, but at that point, I wasn't thinking like that,
Okay.
I had no knowledge of these things, And so he was explaining to me, look, Ray, he said he was involved with this organization, mainly PhD physicists from various universities called Quantrek. And he says, I can get all of them involved and have some other friends as well. And, you need to form an organization and begin to implement what you were told, And so I said, okay, I have no idea what I'm going to do. He says, don't worry, you'll find out. He says, it always works that way. Okay. And so when I left his home, I was like, this is crazy. I spoke to two madmen today, two crazy people, I don't care if one went to MIT for his PhD and the other one is a professor at Harvard. They're both crazy, because I hadn't digested all of this information. I hadn't processed it. Okay. So then 3 days later, I woke up and I must have had a download while I was asleep, okay? Because when I woke up, I had in my mind exactly what we'd be doing. And what we would be doing would be the world's first comprehensive, multiple language, statistical, academic research study of UFO contact experiencers. Why? Because during all this time period, okay, that I've been researching this phenomenon, I tried to read what had been written academically about the phenomenon and what I know, at least statistically. And what I realized was that there was no statistical research study except for a few very small research studies. Like, for example, Kathleen Martin and Denise Stoner had done a study of only 50 people. That's it, 50 people. And they asked 50 questions. And it was mainly abductees. Okay. Well, guess what? Our research study eventually found out that only 1/3 of the people had an abduction. The other 2/3 never had an abduction. And her questions were mainly focused about the abduction phenomenon. Didn't ask a whole bunch of other questions. Okay. Dr. Kenneth,
that's still her side of the field.
Well, she changed. She just published a book. Okay. And the book is From Abduction to Spiritual Transformation. Mm-hmm. Okay. She came out of the closet that she's an experiencer.
Yes.
And she talked about how she was transformed spiritually. She's also in our chapter 6 on medical healings. Mm-hmm. We had 50% of the people that took our survey that had a miraculous medical healing. But Kathy never spoke about it. And she didn't even want her name published when we published our book in 2018. Now she's talked about it in her new book. Mm-hmm. And just like Whitley Strieber started off, these were horrible, negative experiences, abduction this, abduction that. And now Whitley Strieber's Mr. Love and Light, okay? He told me that he prays every night to his visitors for transforming him, okay? He now speaks to his wife, okay, who's deceased.
I know, that book is fantastic, and I did a workshop with him when the summer that book came out.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's had a lot to do with changing him.
Yeah. Well, what happened is that what we discovered in our research study, and I'll go into the details later on, was that the vast majority of these individuals that have had UFO contact eventually become highly spiritual. They totally transform. Okay. So let me continue with the story like that. You can understand the context to it. I know we only have a few minutes before we take a break, right?
You've got 4 minutes.
Okay.
That's a lot of coverage.
Okay. All right. So what happened was that I wrote, because I was a professor myself, I went to Berkeley for a PhD. I had done this academic literature review. I realized that there were only a very, very few number of studies. One was also done by a professor at the University of Connecticut. He was primarily an NDE researcher, one of the pioneers of NDEs. His name is Dr. Kenneth Ring. Okay, he did a research study in 1986 titled the Omega Project. And that was a statistical study where he compared 85 people that had near-death experiences with 85 people that had abduction-related experiences. And he asked them, both groups, numerous questions. Approximately 1/3 of the areas that he focused on was how these people changed. How were you before? How were you after? Okay, we borrowed those 70 questions and a whole bunch of other questions from his research study. And so what happened was that I wrote all this up, maybe 9 pages, 10 pages in detail. I sent it to Edgar Mitchell. I sent it to Rudy Shields. And I also sent it to Mary Rodborough. And I said, I woke up and this was in my head and I typed it out, okay? Which is to do the world's first comprehensive academic statistical research study of UFO contact experiencers. I said, with the 4 of us, can we form an organization? We can be the 4 co-founders, and we can then get our friends to help us out to implement this. They all agreed. So the 4 of us became the co-founders of an organization which eventually became to be known as the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. Free stood for the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. Okay? And so little by little, people called me, or I called people, but most people calling me, contact me. One was Dr. John Klimo. He was a professor for over 45 years of psychology. He had written numerous books on the paranormal, just like Rosemary, okay? He had also taught, most importantly, research methodology to PhD students. So he knew how to conduct these surveys. His specialty was qualitative research studies, which is open-ended questions. So then we brought in Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Kathleen Martin, Barbara Lamb, Denise Stoner, our mutual friend Rosemary Ellen Guiley, this other man that eventually wrote a book on John Keel. Excuse me. And about 4 or 5 other academic professors initially. One was a professor of neuroscience. And then eventually we started adding other academics. We started adding PhD statisticians to our group. And then 9 months we spent developing the questions. We wound up with 666 questions that were quantitative questions, like yes or no from 1 to 5, that type of thing. And then we added 70 open-ended questions, where we asked a general question and asked someone to write as much as they wanted to address these 70 questions, okay? And then we spent 3.5 years administering these 3 surveys. We developed 3 surveys. 2 of them were quantitative, 1 was qualitative. And as you know, Rosemary had her own radio show. So in each of her radio shows, she announced our surveys. Kathleen Martin, every week she was on 1 or 2 radio shows. So she would advertise them. Leo Sprinkle was on radio shows. Barbara Lamb was on radio shows. I was being interviewed as well on numerous radio shows. So each of us took turns advertising it. We also posted it on Facebook every week to hundreds of Facebook sites that dealt with UFOs and the paranormal. Okay. We also had a mailing list. We borrowed each other's mailing list. We made one huge mailing list, and we would bombard people with our research study.
Do you know what?
Yes.
It's break time.
Okay.
I hate to stop you. This is fascinating because I've read these, and the fact that you had open-ended questions and you were just letting them rip, I think that's so just fantastic. So we're going to get right back to this after this news break, and thank you everyone for listening. Y'all come back too.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. As Russian troops push deeper into the devastated Ukrainian city of Mariupol, authorities say Russia has bombed an art school where hundreds of people had taken shelter. NPR's Eric Westervelt reports from western Ukraine that Russia has been relentlessly trying to take over the strategic port city on the Azov Sea.
There's no word yet from local authorities on how many may have been wounded or killed in this latest strike on Mariupol, which has endured multiple horrors during the war. As with the recent bombing of a theater-turned-civilian shelter there, the fear is people may be trapped under the rubble. Meantime, a Ukrainian policeman-turned-soldier, Mikhailo Vershinin, posted a video from the demolished city appealing for better air defense systems from the West. Save the civilian population. Children, elderly people are dying, Vershinin says, adding, the city is destroyed, it is wiped off the face of the earth. Ukrainians fear the strategic port city could fall to Russian forces within days, if not sooner. Eric Westervelt, NPR News in Ivano-Frankivsk, Ukraine.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken plans to tour the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum tomorrow to make an announcement about Burma or Myanmar. As NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports, the Biden administration has decided to call the violence against Rohingya Muslims a genocide.
Secretary Blinken will tour an exhibit called Burma's Path to Genocide and then deliver remarks. There he will accuse Myanmar's military of carrying out a genocide and crimes against humanity in 2017. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims fled the country amid widespread reports of mass rape, killings, and arson. Myanmar's government called it an anti-terrorist operation. Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley says the genocide determination, first reported by Reuters, was long overdue. Still, he calls it a powerful step to hold a brutal regime to account. Myanmar's military seized power in a coup last year. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Washington.
As the more contagious subvariant of Omicron, BA2, drives up COVID infections across Europe, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says it's behind roughly a quarter of the new cases in the United States. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy says while the new variants and cases spikes, they may continue, it is possible to keep hospitalizations and deaths down with vaccinations. He says the focus has to be on preparation, not panic.
Bottom line is those vaccinations and boosters work, and the treatments that we now have in greater quantity than ever before, those also help to reduce our risk. But you'd rather prevent an infection than get it and treat it. That's why these vaccines and boosters are essential.
Speaking there on Fox News Sunday, about 30% of the eligible U.S. population is still unvaccinated, and China is also dealing with a new surge of COVID infections. This is NPR. In Saudi Arabia, as peace talks remain stalled, Yemeni's Houthi rebels are escalating cross-border attacks, unleashing a barrage of drone and missile strikes targeting a liquefied natural gas plant, a water desalination plant, oil facility, and power plant. There were no casualties, but Saudi state-run media say the attacks temporarily cut oil production at one plant and then started a fire at another. This also comes after Saudi Arabia's state-backed oil giant Aramco said its profits rose 124% in 2021. It's a big jump amid soaring oil prices. In the NCAA Women's College Basketball Tournament, Creighton pulled a major upset over second seed Iowa 64-62, and at the same time knocked off one of the biggest stars in women's game out of the championship. Greg Eklund has more.
Iowa sophomore Caitlin Clark became the first in NCAA Division I history to lead the nation in scoring and assists in the same season. But Clark was held to 15 points against the Creighton Blue Jays, which is 12 points below her scoring average.
I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for how I played. And, I think just coming back and working harder than I ever have is really all I can do.
The game was played before a packed arena on the Iowa campus. Making the winning shot was Lauren Jensen, who transferred to Creighton from Iowa. For NPR News, I'm Greg Eklund.
U.S. futures contracts are trading slightly higher at this point. Dow futures up 11 points. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News.
Not everybody wants to run around the White House or Congress all day. That's where the NPR Politics podcast comes in. At 5 p.m., NPR's best political reporters get together and break down the biggest political stories. No noise, just friends making sense of Washington. Listen to the NPR Politics podcast every weekday.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to the second hour of Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I'm going to tell you that if you have not been to fatemag.com recently, you got to check it out. We have got so much information there, and I shared tonight the Silent Minute, and if you didn't get a chance to read it, you can just hit fatemag.com. It's up there. And just T-shirts, trading cards, back issues that haven't been circulated, all kinds of things. If you need to finish your collection, just go do it. Phyllis will help you right out. My guest tonight is Rey Hernandez, Dr. Rey Hernandez. And I am so glad you're here, Rey. I knew this was going to be an outstanding interview, but you're blowing me away. I'm loving it.
That's fantastic. Well, it's very important, the research that we did, because no one has ever done this before. And what we determined was that our research findings totally contradict what is circulating in ufology.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they do.
Yeah. And the reason why is because no one's ever done this before. Okay? As I said before, Kathleen Martin and Denise Stoner interviewed 50 people, and they asked only 50 questions that was related just to abductions. Mm-hmm. But this phenomenon is so much more complicated than that. Okay. Now, we had numerous research findings, but let me just highlight 4 of them, okay, because we don't have a lot of time. Okay. The first one, even though we initially determined that 37% of these individuals, and let me give you the number of, we had over 4,300 individuals, 4,300 that responded to our surveys for more than 125 countries. We also did the study in Spanish, German, and in Slovak. We developed the survey in Chinese and French, but those 2 teams never got their act together, so we don't have that data. But in the Spanish survey, we had over 1,000 people. So this was a huge undertaking. So what I'm going to tell you now is just the English language data. Okay. What we discovered was that initially 37% of these 4,300 individuals viewed their experiences as highly negative. Okay, initially. Now, eventually, the overwhelming number of contact experiencers concluded that their contact experiences were mainly positive. Now, depending on how the question was phrased, the number was between 85% to 95%. Now, depending how you phrase the question, you'll get a different response, okay? So we asked that question of whether your experience was positive, negative, or neutral in more than 25 different ways, okay? So let me go over some of that data. We found out that the overwhelming number of materialist ufologists believe that all contact is an abduction. Well, false. We found out that that's a false assumption.
That is.
Like Whitley Strieber, when he first interviewed me years ago, he says, Rey Hernandez, an abduction researcher. And I said, Whitley, let me clarify you. I know you know a lot about this, but the vast majority of these experiences are not abductions. What we discovered was that only 1/3 of these people had an abduction. The other 2/3 of the people have seen UFOs and that have had interactions with a non-human intelligence, but they've never had an abduction. Okay, so all these other previous studies, like I told you before, they've missed 2/3 of the people. Okay, now what we found out also was the people that did have an abduction, the 1/3 that had an abduction, 70% of these people now call themselves contactees.
Yes.
They don't call themselves abductees. Okay, why? Because initially 38% viewed their experiences as overwhelmingly negative. Why? You see a reptilian being in front of you, you're going to shit your pants. You see these 3 little grays in front of you, you're going to be, scared for the rest of your life. Okay, but what we found out was that the vast majority of these people continued to have numerous experiences. For example, what we found out was that 40% of these individuals have had more than 20 contact experiences. Another 20% are between 10 to 20 contact experiences. Okay, so the more experiences you had, we did a statistical comparison. We took the people with the experiences, how many experiences you had, and negativity. What we found out was the more experiences you had, the more positive you viewed it. Why? Because the experience changed. In the beginning, you had these frightening experiences, let's say for the abductees, of being inspected, lying flat, they're inspecting you. Okay. Towards the end, you're interacting with these angelic beings and they're bringing you to heaven and they're teaching you what death is like. Okay. So the experience changed and your perception of the early experience changed. Like, okay, I was scared of them, from the first ones, but it didn't do anything to me, So it's your perception of it.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
When almost everyone starts with grays.
No. That's another fallacy.
Well, I mean, people that I've talked to.
Okay.
Their initial experience was with grays.
Our study doesn't show that.
Okay.
But for the people that have had an abduction, the vast majority started with grays.
Okay. The abductees, because that's who shares with me all the time.
Okay.
So, but in the instance, and I'm just going to put this out, in the instance of Travis Walton, okay?
Yeah.
When he regained consciousness, when he was well enough to be aware of his surroundings, he saw grays, he got up, he was ready to fight them, tried to kill them. They left the room. Nordics came back in. Something that would be more similar in nature to him, in appearance to him, something he would be more comfortable with. So, is that the different visual, or is that actually a different person?
Well,
what have you found?
I believe that this intelligence that we're interacting with, they appear. I'm going to be jumping ahead of the game now from what I'm talking about, but basically they can appear as what they want you to appear. Okay. Why? Because what we discovered was that these individuals were seeing literally tens of thousands of different types of beings. Okay. Even like this big glob of mucus that's hanging on the corner of your room and communicating telepathically. Okay. In terms of owls, people have described hundreds of different types of owls. Okay. Mm-hmm. The number one type of being actually was the energy being. That was the number one. That was at 57%. Number two was the human looking being at 52%. Now the human looking being were like hundreds and hundreds of different types of human looking beings. They were Asians, they were blacks, they were 70 feet tall. There was little tiny ones, It was like all over the place, okay? Number three was the grays, the short grays at 51%. And then the short grays came again in hundreds of different shapes and forms. Some wore robes, some didn't wear robes. Some wore a mask, others didn't wear a mask. It was like, you name it. And then the number fourth type of being was the spirit being. Like people see a ghost or a spirit, that was number 4, okay? Number 5 was the tall grays, Okay. Number 6 was the insectoid. And then the next one, the insectoid. It looked like an insect, the mantid beings. Okay.
Yes.
And the reptilian was next after that. Okay. Now, all of these beings that I told you about, their negativity rate, okay, was less than 10%. Okay. The short grays was 10.5%. That's it. 10.5% viewed it as negative. That is it. Totally contradicts our circulating ufology. The reptilian being, okay, was 22% negative. But when we went to the open-ended questions to look at the people who had the reptilian experience, what we noted was the reptilian being did not rape their wife and ate their child, and Barack Obama's and the Queen of England is a reptilian. No, none of that bullshit, okay? What we discovered was that people were scared as hell when they encountered the reptilian. Most of the reptilian experiences are up close, like within a few feet from you. And that was scary as hell. So a lot of these people only had 1 or 2 experiences. Those are the ones that was at 22% that viewed them as negative. The vast majority of people that had a reptilian experiences were continued experiences. And then it became much more friendly. The reptilian would then converse with you, telepathically. Like Barbara Lamb had a reptilian experience. She wasn't shocked because she knew about all of this. And so she started communicating with that reptilian being. The reptilian being was like, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. It's important work, And so, that was the overall number one finding regarding positive or negative or neutral. That depending on how the question was phrased, was anywhere from between 85 to 95% did not view their experiences as negative but positive. Okay. The other thing was, as I said before, we even asked it for the different types of beings. Okay. And what we found out was that all of these beings were like under 10%. The only one was the reptilian being, and I already told you what happened with that reptilian being. What we also found out was that another question was that, and we asked that in numerous different ways, the positive, negative, neutral. The other object that we found out that was absolutely fascinating was that these experiences were primarily paranormal. They were not physical experiences. I'll use my case as an example. Okay, I've called down like 4 UFOs, very large objects. They were all different from each other. None of them were the same. They were all completely different from each other. Okay, and I've seen one time a physical being, which was that energy being in my living room. Okay, what we discovered from all of these people, and that's in order to qualify to take our survey, you've had to have had an interaction with a non-human intelligence, and you have had to have seen a UFO. Okay, so what we discovered was that while they did have that physical aspect of it, like in my case, the vast majority of my experiences were paranormal in nature. And this was the position of Jacques Vallée, of Alan Hynek, John Mack, Edgar Mitchell, Rosemary, okay, and so many other people that they said, look, the vast majority of these experiences, they're not physical, they're psychic. They deal with consciousness, okay? And let me give you an example, okay? 95% of these people had paranormal experiences in their home, okay? 80% of these people had an out-of-body experience. Look at that, huge numbers. 80% had an OBE. 67% received telepathic communications. 50% have received a medical healing by non-human intelligence. Look at that, 50%. 1 out of every 2 people, okay? Like I told you about Kathleen Martin, and in my case with our dog, okay? 37% of these people had a near-death experience, 37%. 60% have seen an orb, a physical orb, not from a picture or a video, but physically saw an orb right in front of them, okay? And here's another interesting component. 50% of these people were brought to what I call a matrix reality, to another dimension. Half of these people, okay? Now, does ufology talk about this?
Not at all.
No. All they talk about is Roswell for the 5,000th time. They talk about Rendlesham Forest. Rendlesham Forest for the 1,000th time. They talk about What happened in the UK, in England, with that guy that saw that UFO that landed. That's been discussed thousands of times. But did he talk about the paranormal aspects of it? Never. Okay? But we discovered that's what this phenomenon is all about. So if the phenomenon is primarily associated with the paranormal, what does that tell you about the UFO phenomenon? That it's not a materialist phenomenon. Okay? Now, let me go to the next item. Okay?
Oh, we've got to take a quick break. Yeah. We'll be right back, guys. Y'all come back with us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you very quickly.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
We are confident that none of our hosts are possessed. Being repossessed a few times, that might be a different story. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, and we are just going to get right into it right now with Rey Hernandez because I had to stop him, and I hate doing that. Rey, I'm sorry.
No problem. Let me go to the third major finding. The third major finding is that the contact experience is an overwhelmingly positive, transformative experience. Unlike what David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins have said, okay? David Jacobs and in numerous of his interviews has said that all of these experiences, they're all negative, all of them. He said he's never met an experiencer with a positive experience. Well, our data of thousands of people show otherwise. Why? Because he's pre-selected the people that he works with. He only interviewed the people that viewed their experiences as negative. And at most of his 30-something years, he only worked with 200 people. And then if you try to hypnotically regress someone and you're asking them one leading question of another of people that already are frightened about this experience, what the hell are you going to get in? As they say, crap in, crap out,
Yeah.
So what we did is we administered over 70 questions that were asked by Dr. Kenneth Ring in that book, The Omega Project. And that talked about how were you before and how are you now, okay? So what we found out, again, this is 4,300 people, that these people, okay, depending on the question asked, was between 75 to 90% of how they changed. How did they change? They became more loving to each other. They became more ecological. They became less materialistic. They became more spiritual. They do not fear death. They know the purpose of their lives. They are much more consciously aware. They're less religious. Okay? So it's like you get this person, and all of a sudden he's like a caterpillar that changes into a butterfly. It's a complete transformation. And before we were talking about Whitley Strieber, you know, how he totally changed to Mr. Love and Light. Same thing with Kathleen Martin. Okay? Tremendous transformation. Again, if people want to get a copy of more than half of our book, send me an email to info, I-N-F-O, at agreaterreality.com. That's info at agreaterreality.com, and I'll send you over 450 pages from our book. Now let's go into item number 4. Item number 4 is that contact involves a manipulation of space-time, and that this in turn leads one to hypothesize that this non-human intelligence that we're interacting with might be multi-dimensional. Other people use the term interdimensional experiences, which is the term that I prefer. Okay, Alan Hynek, before he died, he reached that conclusion. Dr. John Mack has been talking about it, you know, for 40 years. Not John Mack, I'm sorry, Jacques Vallée.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. John Mack, right before he passed away, that's the conclusion he came up with. Okay. Edgar Mitchell, the same thing. Rudy Shields from our organization. Dr. Claude Swanson, a PhD physicist from Princeton. Dr. Dean Radin, and numerous other individuals. Okay. Now, this presents the hypothesis that whatever is this intelligence that we're interacting with might actually be embedded in the very fabric of our reality. Okay. Now, volume 2, which is the new book that we're writing, we're going to be discussing that in detail in 4 volumes. Okay. We're going to the title of the book is titled A Greater Reality: The New Paradigm of Non-Local Consciousness, the Paranormal, and the Contact Modalities. We're going to be talking about how all of the paranormal, how near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, the UFO phenomenon, people that see ghosts and spirits, people that take hallucinogens, people that do mystical meditation, pop out of their body, the astral travelers, people that do channeling, okay, et cetera, how all of the psi phenomena, okay, how all of these experiences, right now, they're being seen as separate and distinct, okay? They're not separate and distinct because all of them involve a manipulation of space-time. When you have a near-death experience, you're outside of space, you're outside of time. When you're having an out-of-body experience, you're outside of space, you're outside of time. When you're seeing, Sally, who died 2 weeks ago, and she's right there in your bedroom, conveying a message to you that she's okay, she's outside of space and outside of time, okay? If you take ayahuasca and all of a sudden you have a mantid being that's right on top of you and saying, look, Ray, you messed up, man, because you're not doing this, you're not doing that, blah, blah, blah. And you're seeing this being in a holographic format that's communicating with you. That communication, that intelligence that you're acting with is outside of space-time, okay? Same thing with the UFO phenomenon. You saw by our data that 50% of these people were being brought to another reality, okay?
Yes.
The vast majority of these people, 90 to 95% of these people are having a diverse array of paranormal experiences, okay? This involves a manipulation of space-time, okay? So why are all of these different disciplines being put in a little isolated separate box? Like the UFO people, what the hell does NDEs have to do with it? What the hell does OBEs have to do with it? What does hallucinogenic journeys have to do with it? Same thing with all the other areas, okay? They don't talk to each other. They don't read about each other's phenomena because they think that it belongs in their little box, not related to anything else. So
just a standalone experience.
Standalone experience. What we're doing in our book, okay, it's going to have 4 books. The pages is going to be over 2,500 pages. It's a huge task. We're going to be dividing it into 2 volumes each. The first 2 volumes are going to be theoretical in nature. And in that theoretical section, we're going to have like a who's who of all these PhDs and medical doctors. People are going to be writing about what is consciousness, their take in terms of being able to explain consciousness. We're gonna have 11 articles just on UFOs. All of these articles are all radically different from the materialist mindset of ufology. Okay, it's going to be explaining UFOs from a totally radical perspective. We're going to be having articles on out-of-body experience, astral travel, on remote viewing, articles on near-death experiences. Okay, articles on ghosts and spirits and on spiritual attachments. Okay, when a negative entity gets attached to you. Okay, a lot of people don't know about that, but a lot of these experiencers have had these experiences because once you open up to this greater reality, it's like all of a sudden your brain is not concrete anymore. Now all of a sudden you got holes, and you're able to tap into information from the greater reality. And so so this first 2 volumes are all theoretical articles. Okay, the last 2 articles are articles that are written by major contact experiencers, and we're not talking someone that's seen a couple of UFOs or someone that had a couple of out-of-body experiences. No, we're talking about, as an example, Dr. Melinda Greer. Okay, she's a pediatrician. I sent you a copy of her article. She's a pediatrician. She has seen 12 UFOs, most of them huge UAPs up close by her, and several of them were seen by her spouse. She's had 2 near-death experiences. Her second near-death experience was like truly unbelievable, and it really discusses the nature of our reality and consciousness. After her second NDE, all of a sudden she began to see dead people in her hospital. Okay, she's had out-of-body experiences. She's had astral travel. Okay, she's seen 3 Sasquatch. 2 of them were very up close. Okay, where she could like touch them. Okay, so this is a medical doctor we're talking about. Now I can talk about publicly her name because she just retired. She didn't want her name mentioned, but now we're publishing her book, and she's going to appear in our documentary. So we're going to have articles from people like her, people that have had everything in the kitchen sink. Okay, they are an example that these experiences are all interrelated. They need to be studied as one phenomenon. Why? Because their experiences reflect that fact. They're not having one experience, they're having everything. Okay, and like my personal experiences. Okay, so those are the 2 volumes, and what we're trying to accomplish in these 2 volumes is we're trying to demonstrate, first of all, number 1, that consciousness is primary. That's number 1. Number 2, we're trying to demonstrate the relationship between consciousness and what I termed the contact modalities, which are all of these paranormal experiences, that they need to be studied as one phenomenon. So that's the objective of it. Later on in the future, what we want to do as an organization, the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, or CCRI, which is an organization with over 25 PhDs and several non-academic researchers. What we're going to be doing is doing the similar study that I described to you about the UFO contact experiencers, except we're doing it for the experiencers of the contact modalities. Okay, now it's going to be much more amplified. Now it's all about consciousness and the paranormal, not just ufology. Okay, and again, you could send me an email. The email is info@agreaterreality.com, info@agreaterreality.com, and I will send you information about the second book. I will send you 6 chapters from the second book and give you the front cover of what it looks like, a 1-page introduction to it.
By the way.
Thank you. I spent a lot of time designing that. And also the table of contents, at least for the first 2 chapters, the theoretical chapters. So you can see all the topic headings that we're discussing. No one has ever done this before. No one has even come close to doing what we're doing. And that's why we're calling it the new paradigm. Why? Because we're establishing a new way of viewing our reality.
I am very excited about it.
Thank you. And that's what I'm going to be talking about at the conference, at the Arkansas UFO conference. So if anyone is inclined to go there to see it, come by. We'll go out to lunch, dinner, and we'll sit down at the table and we'll talk. And we'll put you on the mailing list. We're going to have a website that's going to be opened on April 1st. It's going to be a basic design initially, but we're going to be adding to it. But as of April 1st, you'll be able to see the 2 books, okay? And see who's participating in this research study. And the website is agreaterreality.com, C-O-M, agreaterreality.com. That's not open now. It'll be opened as of April 1st.
Well, I know that I went looking, so I'm glad to have a date.
Yeah, that's we put it in parentheses in terms of when it opens.
Yes.
But the date is April 1st, and by the time we publish our book, which is either mid-May or definitely the latest by June 1st, then we should have a full functioning website by that date. But at least you could enter it and you could see tons of information by April 1st.
Well, I'm very excited. I love that you're going to be taking some of the mystere side away, because I've said for a very long time that all of these topics work together, that it's all part and parcel of the same thing.
Well, I'm not the only one. I mean, look at our mutual friend, Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Yes.
You know, she thought she had that same hypothesis for many, many years.
And, you know, it's a great one. I mean, because if you've experienced these things, there are some people that do experience more than just one thing. I've been a paranormal investigator for way over a decade. I've had UFO experiences. I have not had a Sasquatch experience to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't go looking, but I probably should. I've tried to talk people into letting me go with them, and then it's just never worked out. But I think that you kind of have to be open to this all being under the same tent.
What we discovered was that the vast majority of people who've had, an experience via the contact modalities, the vast majority of people are people that originally were contactees. They had one of these experiences. But once you've had one of the experiences, it's like it triggered, like it opened up a door for all the others. For example, for many people was they had a near-death experience. All of a sudden you die, you go to, to another realm, and all of a sudden, boom, you begin to have these experiences. Like in Preston Dennett's case, for example, his first experience started when his mother died. Mm-hmm. A short while later, he saw her ghost, her spirit, in form. Later on, he saw a report on the news about UFOs. He signed up for MUFON. He began to interview UFO experiencers. And lo and behold, he begins to see UFOs. Okay. And then he learns about out-of-body experiences, and then he reads books about it, and he tries to experiment with it. And then it took him quite a while, to learn how to control an OBE. But now the man is like doing astral traveling,
I know, right?
Goes out of his body whenever he wants. So these experiences are triggered by other experiences. For example, this elderly lady who's a major experiencer that nobody knows about. Her name is Ruth Ann Frent. Okay, she literally, I would put her in the top 3 people I've ever met, in terms of major experiences. And her experiences started really when she was like 16 years old. She had an NDE. Okay, and it was the NDE that triggered, a lifelong amount of, you name it, she's had it. She's had it numerous times. So you listen to these stories, but then all of a sudden she gave me a psychic reading of my wife, my daughter, and my father. And she was like, she knew all the details about them, boom, boom, boom. And your mouth is hanging on the floor. It's like, how could this woman? Mind blown, and she did it in 5 minutes. It's not like, it's like right when the camera crew was about to leave, when we were leaving her home, 10:30 at night, she was exhausted. We had been filming her for 2 straight days. And oh my God, Ruth Ann, you were supposed to do a psychic reading for me. Oh, but Ray, it's 10:30 at night. I'm very tired. I mean, I usually do these things in the morning when I got more energy. Well, just something real quick for the camera. Okay, well, who do you want me to read? I said, no, not one person, 3 people. I said, but Ray, that's usually not done that way. You do it one person, right? Well, can you do something real quick for the camera, right? And in like 3 minutes, she told me things about my wife that nobody could have known. She told me things about my daughter that nobody could have known, and things about my father, who's deceased, that definitely nobody knew about. That, for example, my father raised canaries for a living because he had worked in a factory all of his life. All of a sudden, she's listening to her deceased son, and her deceased son gives her the image of this man opening a little bird cage, and a little bird flies around the entire living room. She said, Ray, why did they give me that? And I was like shocked with my tongue on the floor. I said, my father used to raise canaries for a living,
How fun that she got that.
What's that now?
I said, how fun that she got that.
No, she's unbelievable. I never met anyone like her. I mean, she's someone that's been there, done that. She's had interactions with all types of beings, with numerous archangels. She's been to all astral planes. She goes there whenever she wants. I mean, it's like unbelievable, but yet nobody knows about her. And the way I met her was that I spoke at the Arkansas UFO conference I think it was 3 years ago, okay? So after I spoke, I had tons of people around me asking me questions, right? So I saw this tall, elegant-looking lady, she really was a knockout for someone that's in her 80s, and she was there patient, so I waved my hand at her, like, just give me a couple of minutes. So after all the people had left, I waved my hand to come to her. And she said, I was told that I needed to see you. I said, have we ever met before? She said, no, we never met before. But my son told me that I needed to go to this conference. And when I would see the person that I needed to talk to, I would instantly know. And when I heard you speak, I knew it was you, okay? And so then she began to tell me about her life. She came out with photos, and she had photos of all this paranormal stuff, of different, intelligences, of UFOs, and of communication and writings. And it was like, and she started to blow me away to the point where, like, is this woman for real?
No doubt.
No doubt. It was unbelievable. And also the medical doctor. I met her for the first time at that conference. Okay. And she blew me away. So I wound up going with my camera crew, because we're doing a documentary. It's the same title, A Greater Reality. We've been filming for 5 years. And that's why we went to Raymond Moody, because you said you live close to Raymond Moody.
I do.
We interviewed him, and it was unbelievable interview. I asked him questions that no one asked before. He says, of course, all this phenomenon is all interrelated, because it's all consciousness based. How about the UFO stuff? He goes, well, to tell you the truth, I should try to stay away from ufology, because they're all a bunch of nut jobs. But yes, the UFO phenomenon is all consciousness based, So it was like,
we got to take our last break. I'm so sorry. I hate breaks. Not really. Okay. But we'll be right back. Y'all come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. This is our final segment with Dr. Rey Hernandez, and I am so glad. If you have not listened to this whole show, you have just missed out, but don't worry, you can pick us up anywhere that you get your streaming service. We're on iHeart, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Heck, you can even pick us up. We're, thebomb.com in India with Geo Savant. So, Ray, I am turning this floor over to you. I know you have some more things that you want to share, and I will ask questions as you go.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me make a correction. I am not a PhD.
My mistake.
I'm what you call all but dissertation at Berkeley.
Oh, please. My dad took years. It became known as that damn dissertation every time we talked about it until he finally got it. I understand that.
What happened was that I had passed all my, I did all my coursework. I did all my written exams, my oral exams. I defended my PhD dissertation, and I was off to this school called the New School for Social Research in Manhattan, which is a very prestigious school of the social sciences. And they had just started a department for urban planning, which is my area of my discipline where I'm getting my PhD. But my ex-wife got a brain aneurysm, and she has had this disease. She's passed away, lupus disease, and from that disease, she and her sister also died of lupus. So here I was. She couldn't work anymore. Her mother had just recently retired from a factory job. Her sister was a high school student. We had 2 little babies, and then I had to take 2 full-time jobs, and I could never get back to finish my dissertation because of my obligations as a parent, as a husband, and taking care of the family. So that's why I'm an ABD, all but dissertation.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're a good human to put your values in the right spot.
Well, thank you very much. Well, let me talk about one last topic, okay? As we were saying off the air, is that this book, very few people actually know about this book, but yet most of its research findings, I only went through a few of them, okay? Our research findings totally contradict what is circulating in the field of ufology. And you could ask yourself, why? Well, the answer is very, very simple. No one has ever done this study before, okay? This is an academic research study, quantitative and qualitative study done with thousands of people, not just in the US, but all over the world. We also did it in multiple languages. But yet, all of these languages, and also in all the different continents, we broke it up in terms of all the responses from the UK, all the responses from continental Europe, all the responses from Canada, all the responses from the United States, and then we grouped Australia and New Zealand together, their answers. And their responses to all of the questions had less than a 5% statistical variance. That means they were answering the same way to all of these questions. So they were having similar experiences, okay? And so that's another way of viewing the validity of this. Now, our research study, who in the hell pays attention to this, okay? Almost nobody, okay? No one has been inviting me to these UFO conferences, these paranormal conferences, to these consciousness conferences. You know, people just don't care. They want to be entertained with fear and with shock and entertainment on their radio shows. The only one that really has taken a keen interest to all of this was the Arkansas UFO conference invited me 2 years ago. This other man, his last name is Brown. He invited me to a UFO conference in Laughlin, Nevada, and also there was a few individuals that are deeply interested in it. But these are people already understood that this is all interrelated. Okay, but the way to get the message across is not through a book. The way to get it across is through a documentary, especially if you can get this on Netflix. That can be seen by millions of people. So for the last 5 years, we've been going all over the United States to interview over 30 PhD scientists and medical doctors and over 70 experiencers. We mentioned before that you live close to Raymond Moody. We went to Alabama to interview him. And then from there, we went to Houma, Louisiana to interview Dr. Jeffrey Long, which eventually became one of the co-authors of our new book. And I remember speaking with Kenneth Ring, the person that I told you about that that did the book, The Omega Project, right? And so I remember Kenneth telling me, he says, Ray, if you go interview to some of my colleagues, they totally disdain ufology. They think it's all a bunch of crazy people with tinfoil hats. There's no science associated with it, you know, and it's a BS arena, you know, with charlatans. So he says, don't even mention UFO to these people, okay? So the trick I did with Raymond Moody and with Jeffrey Long was that I opened up our 820-page book, and I began to ask them questions from our book, okay? So after 20 minutes or so of reading questions directly from our book, I went to both of them. I said, do you realize that the questions from this came from this book? And I showed them the title of the book. The title of the book is titled Beyond UFOs.
Yes, that's a great book.
Yes, Beyond UFOs. Thank you. Beyond UFOs, the science of consciousness and contact with non-human intelligence. All of a sudden, both of their mouths dropped to the floor because they thought that the questions I was asking them were NDE-related questions. Okay. And then I began to tell them that, look, the phenomenon matches the NDE phenomenon. Okay. Whatever you thought was the UFO phenomenon, throw that away because that's not what it's really about. And then we had like another half-hour conversation about what our data revealed, similar to what you and I have been discussing. Okay. And these people could not believe it because they had a totally different perspective of what ufology was. And it was after that, and we did that with numerous people. We did it with Dean Radin. We did it with Gary Schwartz. Gary Schwartz was a professor at Harvard and Yale, and now he's with the University of Arizona. He's one of the leading scholars on consciousness, and tons of books, and all of them together with Stephen Schwartz, with Claude Swanson, numerous of these academics. They all went to us and they said, Ray, is there any way I could join you guys? You know, because all of these individuals believe that consciousness is primary.
Yes.
Not our material physical reality. All of them also understood that all the paranormal needs to be seen as one phenomenon. And that's why all of these scientists then decided to join us. Okay. So we've captured these people, and they're all going to be in our documentary together with over 70 experiencers. So what we're doing is we're mixing the language of the experiencer with the science of what these researchers have been doing for 20 to 30 years. And so it's going to be a scientific presentation about the true nature of our reality, which is a reality that's consciousness based, okay? And not this BS ufology stuff that people are listening to, or just only NDEs, which is what the ND field focuses on, that it also interacts with all of the paranormal, you know? So that's the new documentary that'll be out, the new documentary by the end of the year. And our trailer is going to be put on our website. Hopefully by May 1st, the trailer for the documentary will be there. And we'll give you information about the documentary. The documentary also is going to be tentatively called A Greater Reality, the same title as our book.
Well, I say stick with your brand.
Yep, that's right. And so that's what I've been doing since 2012, since my initial experience, trying to understand the nature of our reality via the experiencers of the paranormal, what I call the contact modalities. And also, that's a term that I developed in 2013, because I wrote a paper in 2013 titled The Quantum Hologram Theory of Consciousness and the Contact Modalities. And now I've read and listened to tons of people that have used that term, the contact modalities. So it's I'm very humbled by that people are beginning to use that term to demonstrate that all of these experiences need to be studied as one phenomenon.
Can I ask you a question? We have about 4 minutes left, and this caught my eye as I was doing some research, prior to doing the show. When you say quantum hologram, what is that?
Okay, the quantum hologram is another way of describing the greater reality that we live in. That's a term that was developed by Edgar Mitchell. Mm-hmm. Okay, and another way that you could view it as well is if you ever read the book The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. Okay, yes. That goes into some of the description of it. But what Edgar did is he took it to the next level. What he did is he described how human beings are able to tap in to what is commonly called the Akashic records, yes, which he called 0-point energy fields, which is basically our universe is based upon information. Okay, and how these individuals are tapping into the information fields literally from the mind of God, okay, from the greater reality. And that's how they're able to interact with all of the contact modalities, okay? And so Edgar called it a quantum hologram because he had been working with various scientists that were studying holography, how holograms worked. And what a hologram is like a credit card. You could cut it in half and you'll see the same exact image on the other half, except you'll see it at 50% density. You cut it again and you'll see the same image, but then it's also at 50% from the previous density. So it's no matter how low you go, it's still the same image, or how high you go, it's the same image. And that shows that all of reality is one, that there's no division. Okay, it's oneness. And also we have a paper in our new book, which has never been published before, except in the Journal of Cosmology, which is Dr. Edgar Mitchell's magnus opus article, his most important article by far on this topic. And it's not an easy read. It's not written for a physicist, but it's couched in physics language, but it's meant for the layperson. But I had to read it 2 times before I got an understanding of what it was all about. It's not an easy read, but it's profound. And we're going to have, goodness, in the theoretical section, close to 70 articles at that level. So again, email me at info@agreaterreality.com, info@agreaterreality.com, and I'll send you half of our book, Beyond UFOs, and I'll send you 6 profound chapters. 3 of them will be theoretical, 3 of them will be chapters by experiencers from our new book titled A Greater Reality. So don't forget and send me that email, and you'll be educated. This is not entertainment, okay?
I'm so excited about that.
Yep, it's real life.
Well, I tell you what, thank you so much for joining me. It's just been so much information, and I have enjoyed every minute of it. You did a great job of explaining, and I appreciate very much you doing that.
Thank you. And please, if you do talk to other people, let them know about our first book and our second book and what they are about. This is not entertainment, and also this is not woo-woo science.
No,
this is
not.
Science being done by real hardcore academics, astrophysicists, neuroscientists. We're trying to crack the nutshell of our greater reality.
Well,
And
it's
one
completely
last thing,
removing the woo-woo.
yeah. And one last thing is, all of this is about spirituality.
Yes.
It's about spirituality. It's an awakening. All of these tools, the contact modalities, are tools to awakening humanity that we are living in a spiritual reality.
Well, I think that you're doing a great job with that.
Thank you very much.
And that being said, I am so appreciative of every one of y'all who are listening tonight. And like I said, if you didn't get to hear the whole thing, no worries. It is going to be all over the internet on all your streaming services. You can just go and pick it up and give you a listen. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting us. I appreciate every one of you. Again, that is OzarkUFOconference.com if you want to check it out. Ray is featured on there as a great speaker. And that'll be a chance to meet, too. I'm going to be there. So, thanks. Tomorrow night's Denise with the Paranormal Pride. Wednesday, I am going to have Micah Danks with me for Paranormal Experienced. Mark will be back with Universal Truths on Thursday, and Shelley will be with us on the following Friday. So, thanks so much. Don't forget, be the change. If you don't like what you're seeing, and heaven knows there's so much right now that's going on, if you don't like it, fix it. All you have to do is